Hello and welcome back to the Bright Founders Talk podcast from Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. My name is Chris and today's guest is someone who is not only well-versed in several areas of business, including publishing and mentoring, but also now the founder and CEO of Marley. Michelle Duval, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I am feeling awesome, Chris. How are you?
Doing great as well. Lovely to have you. The first question in the light-hearted round is, what makes a good boss in your opinion?
Somebody who is empathetic, deeply seeks to understand their team and builds a personal relationship with them. And most importantly, I think needs to find out why they've joined the team and what they personally want to achieve. And then when you join that mission together, I think you get a really great dynamic.
Oh, just like kind of treating people like individuals rather than
Completely. Yeah.
Interesting. And what do you do to unwind after a busy day?
I sauna.
Oh.
So I infrared sauna most days, and I listen to podcasts, I meditate, I listen to audiobooks, I chill.
All right, interesting. What is infrared sauna?
So infrared sauna is similar to like a normal sauna, but it uses red light therapy in an infrared way. So it deeply penetrates into the muscles and it does rejuvenation, relaxation, and really awesome for health.
And finally, what do you want to be growing up?
This is a funny one, Chris. I wanted to be a racing car driver. So my first goal was to be a racing car driver. And I didn't go on to do that at all, but that was my first goal I ever remember having in life.
How did that come about?
My father was a rally car driver, and so I was brought up around racetracks. And I realized there was no females really at that stage in the game. And I learned to drive when I was 11 years old, and I just loved drive. I still do to this day. I love driving, and it's a super team sport, motor racing, and it's high stakes.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, I imagine very high stakes. Scarily high, in my opinion. Starting off, let's say at the beginning, what did you study and what did you think about that experience at university? Did it help you to get you where you are now?
Absolutely. So I got into study psychology at university. At the very last hour, I deferred and I went to the first ever hotel management school in my country, which is Australia. And I studied there, and I went on to have a really significant career in hospitality, specifically in hotel management. And what I learned from that is at a super young age, by 23, I was on the hotel executive, so they're similar to reporting to the CEO, and we had 1,000 staff. And my particular role was to look after VIP delegations. And so I hosted presidents, prime ministers, elite athletes, all the actors, movie producers, everybody. And they came with massive entourages. And I got to see how people who are at the elite of their field, how much support they have to be successful. And that's been instrumental in me wanting to help everybody to be able to realize their unique potential.
Brilliant. Okay. In that period of time then, did you find that you knew that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or was it because you were around such influential people, that's when you had the idea that maybe I need to do something more, like not more inspiring, but maybe go by myself and kind of make a bigger change rather than working for someone else?
Yeah, I chose hotel management because I wanted to study business, and I had a deep, deep passion for people, which is why I initially wanted to study psychology. I went on later to do a master's degree in coaching psychology, but the passion to do something on my own actually just came out of the desire to really, really help people. So being so young and leading people who were 30 years older than me in such high performance team, with the sort of role that I had, the only way to kind of motivate people was to get to know them, figure out what their goals were, and then to really help them fulfill their personal goals. And as you could hear about that first question you asked me, is really shaped how I think. And at the time when I went out on my own and started my very first business, there was no such field as coaching. Only athletes had coaches, senior executives. It wasn't really a thing at that point in time. And so it was pioneering something that I just thought was deeply needed.
Did you, after this role, did you go on to do any other roles, or you went straight into starting a
No. So
business?
I had about 6 or 7 roles when I was in hotel management, but I went out and in the late 1990s, I started my very first business as an individual coaching firm. I'd go out in the world and I'd say, hey, I'm a coach. And they'd say, what sports team do you coach? And I say, no, I coach senior executives and like in the day it wasn't founders, but business owners. And people were like, what does that person do? And so I had the real challenge of having to attempt to build both for my very first business, but also to build a field as well. So twofold, having to make something known that really wasn't known.
Is that Equilibrio? Is that
Yeah, that was my very first coaching firm. Yeah.
Wow, okay. So in that period of time, I suppose, starting that new company, there's a lot of questions I want to ask about that. Maybe just before that, is there anything you picked up during that time, during your studies, that first very sort of diverse role that you had in that company in the hotel industry? Is there anything you picked up that you kind of, you still use today? I don't know whether that may be managing people or it could be something a bit more technical.
Yeah, just that deep understanding of now I'm in product and tech and AI, putting the user very first, but back in hotels, it was a guest, and really deeply understanding the commercial side of a hotel. One of my roles I had to ensure that the hotel could operate at maximum capacity, which is a little bit like an airline, making sure that you overbook and they manage the rooms and all those challenging things from a commercial capacity standpoint. But doing that in those days, the guest, or today, a user at the very heart of it. And that really is what drives me. So yeah, putting the user first.
Okay. So after that, then Equilibrio came about. Sort of how did you get started with that in terms of starting a business? Was it quite straightforward, or was it kind of an organic growth, or was it something that took a little bit more time to get started?
Yeah. So being a new field and a new modality, and me being young as well, super young, it took, a lot of figuring out. I got my first 2 coachees, and they ended up referring me extensively. And my business just rapidly grew by word of mouth. Within 6 months, I had a full coaching practice. And within my very first year, I had, crazily, somehow, I had 161 coaches reach out to me from around the world asking me to train them to be a coach. And I was like, what? Why me? So I declined to train anybody as a coach for several years. And then I ended up realizing that I had a methodology that was super, I think, impactful, I learned. And that was why people were reaching out to me and asking me to train them. So several years later, I co-developed a coaching psychology model and methodology, and then we published that in a couple of books. And in parallel to my first company, we started to train executive life and business coaches in many different countries. And that was super crucial to what I do now, because we developed linguistic language models that facilitate individuals and teams to be able to make change. And we trained that into human coaches, and it's now being used, in many, many, many countries. And so that was instrumental in what we've now trained into what we do today in AI coaching.
So was that part when you went into mentoring other people? That's when you were in Accelerate. Is that coaching?
In Equilibrio, yeah.
Oh, there's Equilibrio. Okay.
Yeah.
I see. So what was the linguistic approach then? What was that exactly?
Yeah. So when you're helping an individual or a founder or a senior executive or any person to be able to make changes in their life or in their leadership or in their business, is a very solution-orientated, goals-based approach. And then figuring out how to help them to make those changes is one level. But we went on to develop a methodology that helped people to make changes to their beliefs, their self-identity, their values, and it became very developmental and transformational coaching. And so we needed to build some models to for other people to follow. And those models are very reliable at facilitating people to be able to make changes.
So after how many years was it with?
So Equilibrio went for over 25 years.
Yeah, wow. Okay, amazing. Yeah. What kind of inspired you to make the jump into something different, into Mali? If we can get into that.
Yeah. So after I stepped back from the coach training of coaches and that whole methodology, I went into to working mostly with founders. And so I have had the privilege of coaching personally some of the world's most successful founders of all sorts of companies, including many tech companies. And I was working with people who have gone on to have multi-billion-dollar exits, multi-$100 million exits, and then other folk who were really struggling to raise capital, couldn't get through the entrepreneurial journey. And we collected a lot of qualitative data over that period of time, over 15 years. And I started to want to study those folks. So we did a world first study looking at correlations between founders who go on to be hugely successful versus those who fail. And at the end of that study, and we got to the point to publish it, some of the founders who were in the study asked me if I wanted to commercialize the research and put it into a technology platform. So as a side hustle to my coaching firm in 2017, we made a little people analytics platform that VCs, accelerator programs, founders and startup teams can actually benchmark themselves against the data to see whether they have the entrepreneurial DNA. If they don't, what are their blind spots so that they can find the right co-founder or their VCs, investors can support them. So we did that between 2017 and 2019 as a side hustle to my coaching firm. And then in 2020, we went full-time with what's now called Marley. It was called Fingerprint for Success. And that was off the back of building a prototype in 2018 and 2019 for an AI coach.
Okay. So in 2020, you went full-time with Marley?
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay.
That was off the back of we developed an AI coach, a prototype for an AI coach in 2018 and 2019.
So with this then, it seems like it's something you were kind of just before AI became this kind of buzzword. And, I think now everyone's pretty confident in AI. But I feel like for the, let's say, people who are not in this specific field, in those days, it maybe seemed a bit... I think people were reluctant to use it, maybe because they're not sure, what it is. Maybe, is it actually better than a human and so on. So I just wondered, what was your experience getting started with this AI coach and other, these high performing individuals? Was it easy to convince them to, okay, go down this route with you?
Well, so in 2018 was when I first went to raise capital for the AI coach, and investors said to me, the best that anyone in the world can do is Google. And at that stage, Google had developed some technology where you could use AI to book a haircut. And all the investors said to me, not all of them, most of them said to me, what makes you think you're going to be able to master conversational AI? And I said, well, I've got really advanced linguistic models that we've trained humans to do. And I've got a pretty clear thesis on how to do it with AI. And so they were like, well, we don't think so. Who's going to want to talk to an AI coach? Who's going to sit and chat to a chatbot? And I said, we're pretty confident that they will. And so I didn't raise capital in 2018 for it. And then in 2019, I built a prototype of the AI coach and started to user test the prototype. And we user tested it with people who'd experienced human coaching and also people who hadn't. And those who'd experienced human coaching had said it was very similar to like being coached by me. And we were blown away. Like that was an amazing, amazing outcome. And so we found that a lot of people enjoy talking to an AI coach because they somehow feel more anonymous and more like they can be more vulnerable and that they can be more authentic, that they're not going to be judged by the AI. And so we started to get, a lot of beta testing done. And then we brought it to market in 2020 after we raised capital for it.
How does it actually work then? So if I'm a business owner and, I want to maybe improve the performance of my employees as well, how does it work? They approach you and then you kind of analyze their company, or you just, do they have a self-assessment sort of area on the platform? Yeah,
so they're able to sign up for free. And anyone, doesn't have to be the company doesn't need to do it, any individual. So anyone who wants to help themselves or their team get better can just sign up for free, and then they can start using most of the features in the product for free. So we've got a free model very similar to companies like Miro and Canva and similar. And then they are asked some questions, and we do what we call an evidence-based motivational analysis. And that helps us to be able to look at what motivates an individual or a team, what doesn't motivate them. And then using our proprietary data, the user can ask questions about themselves to the AI or ask questions about their teammates. And they can even ask questions about their company's culture. So that's one part of it. So they can learn how to better connect with each other. They can learn how to collaborate better. They can learn how to assign individuals to specific roles that will motivate them and bring out the best in them. They can ask questions to the AI coach about managing a one-on-one or how to convince someone to buy their product or anything like that. So that's part one. And then part two is being able to use the AI coach to set goals and to do an 8-week coaching program completely run by the AI coach. And that's over 2 sessions where you're working towards goals. You can coach towards 1,000 different goal types. So you could be coaching to, how do I increase the psychological safety in my team? How do I improve my emotional intelligence? How do I overcome imposter syndrome? How do I find the love of my life? So we do work goals and personal goals.
Oh, right. Wow. Okay. Do you feel that people who are maybe a little bit unsuccessful in business is due to personal goals not being met?
What our data's found from all the research and studies we've done is that we found certain attitudes and styles of leadership correlate with venture outcomes, and certain ones correlate with venture failure. So, for example, we found that founders who have a big picture focus raise more rounds of capital. They grow larger in size by revenue and number of employees, and they have more global ambitions rather than local ambitions. So big picture thinking is abstract, big picture, global, getting the gist of something versus someone who's very concrete, very detailed and very precise. And often people who come from a technical background as a founder, as a software engineer, for example, are often technical and precise. And that can be some of the reasons that people struggle. We found that a high focus on detail in the early stages of a startup correlates with early stage startup failure. And so it's not so much about people's personal goals, it's about these mindsets that can really get in the way. So, for example, we found founders who have a high bias for taking action correlates with more rounds of venture capital, the value of their exit is much higher versus those who pause, reflect, and wait for the right time to act.
Do you think then that there are specific people who are more likely to use Marley than others based on this research? Like there's a specific type of person that's could really use this coach compared to, well, everyone could use it, but there's a specific type of person, maybe someone who is, a software engineer or that kind of thing, who wants to start their own company.
We find all types of people find value, particularly those who prefer to use data. So we use data to run our growth. We use data to analyze technology and systems. We use data to benchmark performance. And so what we provide in Marley is human data. And so anyone who loves to use data to make decisions and to get better, they're the ones who prefer to use our product.
Have you noticed as well because you, like you say, started in 2018 and now in 2024, it seems like for me personally that AI is changing a million miles an hour every day. So I just wondered, what do you think about AI right now? Has your model changed this year, for example, due to the rapid growth of AI?
Yeah, so we got into market in 2020 and then all the way up, 2021 and 22, we, had a long-term roadmap of being able to create autonomous coaching sessions. And there was lots of limitations because we didn't have access to large language models at that point in time. So the large language models, ChatGPT, November 2022, the whole world suddenly was sitting in bed at night talking to an AI.
Yes.
And so I felt very convicted. I wanted to go and tell those VCs from 2018, told you so.
Right.
But yeah, so the large language models, we rapidly adopted them in 2023, and it allowed us to launch some of the things that were further out on our roadmap to bring them forward.
I think it's really interesting, like you said, it's, now expanded to thousands of people. Everyone's in bed using it or every day. Have you noticed anything culturally as well, like with AI coaching? Have you noticed that? How does it work with different cultures and how they think about things? Are you expanding globally?
Yeah, so we've got users in 196 countries, and we actually do culture studies. So we get the data of different regions and then we compare them. So we can tell you with data what makes the US culture at work different from the UK culture at work. And we absolutely see differences globally, but we also see differences through the data that we have on generations. So some of the curious stuff on the generational data is we've got data that spans 25 years, and we're able to cut it up and slice it in different ways. And we can see that the baby boomer generation had a really strong internal conviction. They could make decisions without referencing data. They could make decisions without referencing other people. And then when you go from Gen X, it gets less. Then when you go to millennials, it gets less. And when you go to Gen Z, the youngest generation in the workforce, they are extremely low on trusting themselves, virtually zero. And
Really?
they have extremely high external reference. So they're always wanting to check and compare with others or use data and so on. And so we know that Gen Z loves data and they can use that to be more informed. But we also know Gen Z is the group that finished university in the pandemic and onboarded into their first jobs in a remote environment. And we can see that in the data as well. They need a lot of support and supervision because they haven't gone through some of those social norms that you would normally at university or work in an in-person work environment.
Does that mean anything in terms of, is there any better way to work in that sense? Is any generation, or does it depend?
Well, a whole lot of data that's coming out, it's not our own data, but we can see it in our data. 75%, multiple studies are showing this, 75% of Gen Z have mental health issues, so anxiety and depression. And we also know that currently across all generations, 60% of people feel disconnected or a lack of connection at work. And so it's sort of that post-pandemic era, and then Gen Z suffering through that. So work is radically changing, and the future of how we need to generate and what we need to do for our workforce, we need to be super, super mindful. People are really suffering in this period. And so it's changing the way what people need at work and how we need to think about how we onboard new team members who are in those generations.
It's really interesting because it from my perspective, it seems like nowadays companies are more aware of social, making people feel part of a company, different events, I don't know, having different team building events. Whereas before I felt like it was more like, we pay you, you work, goodbye. Yeah. But doesn't seem to be the case in terms of.
Well, it's a radical change. I've been facilitating companies for all these years, as you've heard. I'm so thrilled and so happy to see that team members are welcomed, inclusivity. We want diverse teams. The world's finally at that point, and a lot of my coaching has been helping leaders to pave that path, which I'm thrilled about. And in part, we've now got the challenge of that new environment and the generations coming into it who don't have as much confidence and don't know how to make decisions on their own. And so we're in an in-between phase.
Now, regarding Marley then, what do you expect for the future then? Where do you want to go, or what do you want to do with the company?
Yeah, so we're on a deep, deep mission to help everybody bring out the best in themselves and each other, firstly at work and then in all aspects of their lives. And we've made the technology, so we've got a beautiful, app, but the big mission is to have it deeply in the flow of work. So as you're working in Slack, we've got a Slack integration. And as you're working in Google, we've got one of those as well. You're able to get insights about yourself and your team, and you're able to use that to coach yourself and your team right where you're doing your work, so that you can all be confident and you can all bring out the best in each other, so that we can bring our best selves at work and people can be fulfilled, can be confident, and we can really prepare for the future and solve some of these massive big problems around climate and all the stuff that's going on with Gen Z.
Do you feel for yourself personally as well that as this grows, you hope to, balance your own work-life balance or to find a good balance between work and your personal life in terms of if there's an AI, then you can maybe take a step back and do a bit of, well, to have a bit of time for yourself as well, or not?
Well, our mission's massive. It's a massive, big mission. And as you can hear, the world, we saw the need for the AI well before some of the world was ready for it. And that came with challenges. And as we go into the next phases, the responsibility that comes with building an AI company is something we take super seriously. So being responsible with AI and working through worst case outcomes that could impact society and preventing them is super important. So work-life balance, how I think about it is that there's a certain phase where you might sacrifice some things to give birth to something new, and parents do that when they're giving birth to families, and founders do that for a certain period of time. And for the short term now, we're in that phase, and that's what it needs from me. So my focus isn't work-life balance, is about impact.
Okay, I see. So it's kind of like a wave, sometimes there's more and then
Exactly.
sometimes there's less.
Exactly.
Brilliant. I'll let you go and get back to Mali. And thanks for your time, Michelle. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Chris. It was great to chat with you.